I invite you to look at the screen right now, and we have a definition that's going to be on the screen. As an audience, I would like for us to read this definition of tolerance together. Tolerance is an important concept that helps people to live together peacefully. To be tolerant means that you accept other people's opinions and preferences, even when they live in a way that you don't agree with. Tolerant people show strength and that they can deal with different opinions and perspectives. Thank you. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying that I totally disagree with that statement. I don't know and believe if people are living together peacefully when they are tolerating each other, because they're tolerating. Secondly, if they're not living together peacefully, they cannot be showing some type of strength. So I think we believe that we are having a higher state of social consciousness. I believe we think that we are having some type of peace or that it's the final state for social acceptance and or social inclusion, but really is it? See, tolerance, in my opinion, is hierarchical. I am going to allow you to come into my world if I so choose, and it's on my terms and my conditions. It doesn't really matter about you. Tolerance is hierarchical. And if tolerance is hierarchical, then it's all about how I determine you to be for me. So as we're looking at this today, think about how we often will say that tolerance is the final state for social acceptance and social inclusion. Let me give you an example. I'm going to call my friend Jill out here for just a minute. We're going to just do a little quick role play. Jill, would you come out here with me, please? Give Jill a hand. She's been awesome today. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. On to the red dot. Yes, you go. So, Jill, we're going to role play a little bit. Okay, we're on a date. It's our first date.
Okay.
We just met on Match.com, y'all. And as we have met, and we just kind of met each other at a restaurant, and you picked the restaurant. So what's your favorite restaurant?
The Margaret at Pine Creek.
The Margaret at Pine Creek. Absolutely a gorgeous restaurant. And then we're eating a meal, and what's your favorite dish?
Oh my gosh, probably the lobster bisque.
Lobster bisque. Oh my gosh, that's where we're sitting down. And then I'm feeling you, and you're feeling me. We're just vibing together. Everything's going so well. And you do something that lets me know that it's going well. What would that be?
This is really kind of fun.
Wow. Okay, so I just got the signal. This is kind of fun, y'all. Okay, and I say, Jill, I really enjoyed being in. I put on my Barry White voice, and I get deep, and I say, hey, I've so much enjoyed tolerating you tonight. And in fact, I've enjoyed tolerating you so much and tolerating our conversation. I would love to tolerate you again next Saturday night. What do you say?
I think I might have to pass on this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jill. I appreciate it. Thanks for playing. Give Jill a hand. So I believe that Jill is probably not feeling valued in that one moment. In fact, she's probably not feeling in a state of being at peace in that one moment. She's not thinking that we're coming together. She doesn't see me as strong anymore. Not strong physically, but strength in the relationship that we have. The relationship has now waned a bit to the point that she just walked off the stage on me, y'all. That's what I'm talking about when we're talking about tolerance, because tolerance also has this cost mindset. What does it cost us? I mean, for me, it could be the relationship or a second date, but what is tolerance actually costing us? Is there a value that we are placing on a tolerant mindset? When I was working for the United States Olympic Committee and U.S. Paralympics Division, I was tasked to build a couple of programs. The first program was the Paralympic Military Sport Program. Now, this program served wounded, ill, and injured service members to use sports as a tool for the rehabilitation. I was once in the military, had gone to some athletic events, and it seemed like a great thing to do. So as we were building that program, it was very difficult, but people got on board with it. The other program was the Paralympic Sport Club program. Now, this program was for athletes that had physical disabilities that were generally in the marketplace of young or youth athletics, all the way up to maybe 25, 30 years of age. Another heavy lift, But the program was very fragmented and very stagnant. And I was trying to understand why this military sport program was growing, but this other Paralympic Sport Club program was not. During my time at the Olympic Committee, I had the invitation to go teach a diversity and inclusion class on disability at the National Football League in New York City. And at this meeting, I came across this gentleman by the name of Dr. Harry Edwards. He's a sociologist emeritus now at Cal Berkeley. And so as he came up and gave his presentation, he said something that made me kind of go off on this tangent on looking at tolerance in a different way. Now, he was looking at how do we sustain change. And he came up with three things. He said the first thing for sustainable change, you need to have a dependable and developed pipeline of talent. A dependable and developed pipeline of talent. The second thing you need to have in sustainable change is a persistent and a pervasive demand. Somebody saying that this talent actually has to go someplace. It has to be accepted. It has to be valued in this space. And the third thing is said that you have to have the institution or the organization or the individual that's looking to hire this talent or have this talent actually has to want it. When you have that, he says, you have the perfect storm. If you don't, you are getting a quota system and you are tolerating the individuals in it. And the light bulb went off in my head. And I said, that was it. When I built the Paralympic military sport program, even though it was a heavy lift, people got on board. I had a dependable and developed pipeline of talent, injured military service members who were coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan, and we're trying to build sports programs for them to get back to a healthy and active lifestyle. I had a persistent and pervasive demand. The commanders, they were on board with it, even though I called 35 from a hotel room. One called me back, Lieutenant Colonel Casey Bolton, up at Fort Lewis, Washington. He says, what's this thing you're doing, register? And all of a sudden, I was in Fort Lewis, Washington, and we were now going to be in 36 communities across the United States in warrior transition units. And then finally, we had the institution that was being impressed upon the change actually wanted to change. It was the military. And it was not just one service, it was all branches of service wanted to raise the status and look at a holistic way to work with wounded and injured service members. Because before, when I came through, when I was injured, it was a medical holding company. Not a lot of line of sight on me at that point. Now we're shifting to a warrior transition unit, holistic approach. But when I was on the other side with the Paralympic Sport Club program, it was very different. I was having different results. Because the military program, that thing blossomed, it grew. It grew to the Olympic Committee putting on the Warrior Games. It grew to the point of Prince Harry coming over in 2013 to start the Invictus Games and some other things that we put in place. But this other program over here, it wasn't growing as fast. Even though we had great organizations across the United States that were trying to build, like Disabled Sports USA or the Endeavor Games, these people were putting together programs for physical and disabled children, and it just was fragmented and was stalling because we truly didn't have a developed and dependable pipeline of talent. Even though we had children with disabilities in the school systems, they never went out to recess with everybody else. They were put off in computer labs. We never had anybody, the athletic directors, really say, we need you on our team, like when the big, strong man or the big, strong woman comes into the athletic department, we salivate over them and bring them because you got to be on our basketball team, football team, whatever team we want to put them on. We look at those individuals with disabilities differently. So therefore, we didn't have really a pervasive demand with the talent that we really didn't have to push the program forward. Let alone the institution that was being pressed upon to change actually wanted to change. They didn't even know what Paralympics was. Do you all know? I mean, it's for athletes with physical disabilities and visual impairments. Yet they were confusing it with Special Olympics. Another great organization, but the wrong organization. So we're seeing that in this moment, in this space, this program, the military program, was being valued and this other one really was not. And so I thought about that and said, how is it that we have this dichotomy between the two organizations? And I think that there's something that actually lies beyond the tolerance, because this was being accepted and this one was being tolerated. So what lies beyond it? As I was thinking about that, I looked at the 1990 American with Disabilities Act that was signed into law by George H.W. Bush. At that point in time, there were about 71.5% of people with disabilities were not employed. And then you go to, like, we're almost in 2020, can y'all believe that? And we see the numbers have not even shifted, just maybe 0.5% down. Now we have ramps, we have curb cutouts. You can get into this nice, beautiful auditorium with your wheelchair. If you're visually impaired, you can come in as well. But when we're talking about the attitudinal barriers, they still exist because we are tolerating people with disabilities. We're still hierarchical. I like you. You can come in. We can have supper. We can have tea. I'm not going to hire you. Played out over the last 30 years. So how do we shift it? How do we get to a point where we can actually elevate our consciousness and live beyond the tolerance? Well, I always go first because I had to do the same thing. I had an unconscious bias that I didn't know about, right? It's a redundant statement. You should be laughing at that one. I had an unconscious bias because I made the Paralympic swim team. Now, to put this in context, I had been a 4-time track and field All-American at the University of Arkansas. I ran the high hurdles, I ran the mile relay team, earned 4 All-American honors, went to 2 Olympic trials in the high hurdles, the long jump, and the 400-meter hurdles. In 1994, on May 17th, I had an injury that resulted in the amputation of my left leg when I was serving in the United States Army. Went across the hurdle, snapped my leg in half, and then 7 days later became an amputee. It's another story. But now I began swimming for physical therapy. I got so fast in the water that I somehow fluked up, messed up, and actually made the Paralympic team 23 months later. I thought it was funny too, because I went from a 400-meter hurdler to an African-American swimmer. So here I was now, had just made the Paralympic team, didn't really realize or understand I had this unconscious bias about people with disabilities. As I was sitting in this gate waiting area in August of 1996, I'm with 3 teams: the wheelchair basketball team, the Paralympic track and field team, and the swim team. I'm sitting down in a seat, and I'm looking around this whole gate waiting area with just kind of indignation because I wanted to be on the Olympic team, not the Paralympic team. All I could see from my seat were people with disabilities. I could see people who were blind. I could see people who had cerebral palsy. I could see people who were using wheelchairs. They were paraplegics and quadriplegics, people of little stature, and of course, like myself, amputees. What's the value? What's the benefit of being on this team? I want to be on the Olympic team, not the Paralympic team. I'm sitting next to a gentleman. He's in a 3-piece, beautiful Armani suit. He's got gator skin shoes on, pulling a Louis Vuitton bag, and he's talking so loud on the cell phone that I just want to reach out and touch him. But I kept my hands to myself. Value, benefit. Well, the gate agent, she gets up to the lectern with herself, and she says, "Ladies and gentlemen, flight number 300 is now ready for passenger boarding. Will everyone who needs a little more time and assistance please get up and board the aircraft at this time?" So 60 of my Paralympic teammates got up and began to walk down the jet bridge, and I said, benefit number 1. Oh, that's a perk. So I get on the plane, I take my seat. I like the window seat. I'm in 17F. And I'm watching this amazing spectacle of all my teammates coming on board the aircraft. Some are filing to the back. Those that are blind, they're being led on by their teammates by using their shoulders. Those who are in wheelchairs, they're actually getting out and actually in aisle chairs, getting to their seats. Those that are using a cerebral palsy are using the backs of chairs to kind of get to their seats as they ambulate. And then I see Tree. Now, Tree is on the wheelchair basketball team. Tree is a bilateral amputee. Tree is standing 6 feet 8 inches tall. He can be a tree at 6'8", or he can be a stump at 4'3", depending upon which legs he picks out of his closet in the morning time. Right? So he's got those stilt legs on, stops at seat 7C, sits down, pops his artificial legs off, hands them to the flight attendant, who then places his legs in the overhead bin. 17F, I get it, benefit number 3. More leg room. The flight attendant looks back at him and says, Tree, may I help with anything else? And Tree says, no, ma'am, I'm good, and I'm good. Off she walks back to the red curtains to bring all the tabs on board, all the temporarily able-bodied individuals' tabs. That's all y'all folk, if you didn't know who that was. Okay. And when she went through those curtains, Tree, now being 4'3", he jumps up into a seat. He takes his long basketball arms, hoists himself up into the overhead bin, lays prone next to those legs, closes the bin door. 17F. I catch eyes with Amy, my swim teammate. Amy puts her head down, turns beet red, twiddles her thumbs like they have done this 1,000 times before. So I am like on the edge of my seat. What's going to happen next? Who's going to sit in that 7th row? And as people are filing on board the aircraft, all the tabs going to the back and filing out side to side, we have our winner, Mr. Armani suit. Still pulling that Louis Vuitton bag that will not fit underneath the seat back pocket in front of him as he stops at seat 7C. He must go to the overhead bin where our friend Tree has been lying prone for the last 5 minutes. And when he goes to lift that latch, boom, out Tree pops. Jump just like you did. Armani goes from the 7th row, Carl Lewis long jump back to the 17th row where I'm at, skips on those gator skin shoes. I catch eyes back with Amy. Amy says, oh, that's pretty good, John. Last guy made the row number 10. That's a new world record. So Armani gets all of his stuff, dazed and confused, walks back up to that 7th row where, no joke, Tree is lying there with his hand on his chin. Those little nubby leg things are crossed. And he says, I'm sorry, sir, this overhead bin space has been filled. So as I'm cracking up back there in 17F, I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, what is going on with this amazing team? And I'm just laughing in hysterics. And then I began to think, 10 minutes ago, in the gate waiting area, I was tolerating my teammates. I was in a position of tolerance because I wanted to be on the Olympic team and not the Paralympic team. It looked like I was going to have a lot more fun on the Paralympic team than I ever was going to have on the Olympic team. As I thought about that, I began to think, what is that it? It's that what we're looking for? The 4th level is tolerance not what we're aiming for? Can we go beyond tolerance? And I believe it is. I believe it's value and appreciation. Because the individuals that I was looking at, that I was once tolerating, all they wanted to do was be accepted as who they were for who they were. They weren't holding themselves back because of my ignorance. They were pushing themselves forward despite of it. I was the one that needed to grow. I was actually the Armani Stoop guy. I was the one that was being the jerk in my own headspace. How many times do we do that? I'll let you into my space if I declare you worthy. We need to value and appreciate those that are in our sphere. So when I look at this, I look at the Accenture report that came out in 4th quarter of last year. And the Accenture report looked at companies that were like each other. So think about a Coke or a Pepsi. Think about a McDonald's or a Burger King. The company that has a propensity to have people with disabilities as a culture in their workplace actually outperforms the other company 4-to-1 in shareholder returns. 4-to-1. That's amazing. So it caused the comptroller of New York State, Mr. Thomas DiNapoli, who manages $1 trillion in pension funds, to say, I got an idea. I'm going to start investing my money into, or the people's money, into companies that look like this because I want a higher rate of return. And he announced it, not in Washington, D.C., but on the New York Stock Exchange. With all those individual companies in the room, you could have heard a pin drop when he said it. Because guess what's happening now? Disability is being valued. And because disability is being valued with dollars, economics, people want to get in on the game. They want to do culture reviews. They want to figure out where they are in time and space with it. And that's the incredible space, because what we have learned now is that tolerance and acceptance does not equal value and appreciation. We want the value side. So I want us to go back once again to how we started and how we began. And let's insert the word value and appreciation instead of the word tolerance and see how this definition now reads. So on the count of three, let's read. 1, 2, 3, read. Value and appreciation are important concepts that help people live together peacefully. To value and appreciate means you accept other people's opinions and preferences, even when they live in a way that you do not agree with. People who value and appreciate others show strength in that they can deal with different opinions and perspectives. It's a different read, isn't it? When we look at that and we look at the society that we are now living in, wouldn't it be great to move beyond the tolerance into value and appreciation? We can sit across the aisle from somebody that might be a different political party and have decent conversation, knowing that we can value the input of the other individual. Because when we tolerate, we're seeing people as objects. When we value, we're seeing people as people. I think there's something that we can say here. The first is that tolerance and acceptance equals value and appreciation, that we all can elevate beyond tolerance. However, the final concept or thought I would like to leave you with today is, the next time you go to board an aircraft and you go to reach for the overhead bin, just be careful. Because you never know what life's overhead bin or living beyond tolerance may do for you. Go forth and inspire your world.